now you have the same style on these rounded square. Oh, bye mouse. This is my rounded square. All right, today we're going to look at Miro, my new favorite, or not new, but my favorite production tool. Really, this is an amazing platform. I mean, you can use this for so many things. So today we're going to look at different things that we can use Miro for. I'm going to start off by going to their webpage. Of course, I would appreciate it if you click my affiliate link and sign up from that one. So when you go into Miro.com, the webpage, you get this greeting page where you can sign up or you can download the actual application, the standalone application. So that's what I've done so far. One of the beauties about Miro is that it actually does work online. So you can do this wherever you are. I mean, if you have internet, you have access to your Miro boards. And boards is one of the key elements of Miro. So if we start off by looking at boards, that's this is your dashboard when you log into Miro. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a board. And a board is basically a digital whiteboard. It's an empty space, and on this empty space, you can drop whatever you want. So new board. I'm going to rename it right away. Here we go. And we're going to call this YouTube. But let's get down to actual content that you can create on the canvas. So we're going to start simple. We're going to start with text. And I'm going to call this element. Every element can be linked to each other in some sort of way. So let's just start with text. And for text, whenever you select a text box, you get all the options for the text element. So of course you have, well, this is also nice because you can actually change this at any time. So if I don't want the text, I just want a box instead, I can change that. But let's just stay on text. You can also go in and change your font. You can create or like increase or decrease the font size. If you're not happy with the steps here, you can also double click in here and type something. There we go. And you can do a bold, italic, underline, or overline. You can also change the alignment of the text. So if we add a bunch of text here, you can also always change the alignment of the text. We can create bullet lists as well with the different types that we're used to from before, with bullets like points and numbers. So you just keep working with the enter key or the return key, and then you use tab or shift tab to step in and back out. You can create links. So if you say you want to go somewhere, highlight that, click the link, and then you go to Google. So this is now a link, which could be handy if you're actually working with a bunch of references. That's what we do in my line of work in animation and CG. We use Miro to create huge boards of inspiration and reference images, actual concept paintings, and links to other productions where we are inspired. So using links just straight into the canvas as text is great. So just to make this a bit easier, I'm gonna delete that and create a new one. There we go. The color here, you can change the color of the actual text, and you can create the background color as well, like a highlight color. This is not on by default. And you can also see that there's a gap in between here. And the reason for this is that this area here between the highlight and the actual outline is the frame area. So you have a color and opacity and a border style. So let's look at the border thickness and opacity here. You also have different styles. So if we do something like this, you get a border outline. But you can also add a color to the border. So this area around the text is basically for border and outline, which is both called border. You can lock your elements as well. That means that you can't really do anything with it. If you do select it though, you long press to unlock it again. The dotted lines here is for the more menu, and there's not too much here that you generally need. So I'm just going to leave that out. You can copy styles. That's also great. If you, for example, make something else here and you change everything, you kill these maybe. So maybe you have different texts, and whenever you create a text next, it's going to use whatever you made last time. So if I did this now and I'm going to create a new text over here, when I click text and I drop it here, it's going to be the same style as this. So you can go in here and copy the style, go back in here and paste the style. So that way it's really easy to transfer styles. All right, so that was text. Let's look at sticky notes. Now, sticky notes is basically just a post-it note, but I guess they can't say that because of copyright. So this is called a sticky note in Miro. And the same thing here goes for the variety of attributes you can change. You can change the font size. So if you actually start typing something, note, you have auto size here. You can also take the font size up and down. When it comes to the actual fonts, you only have like a handwritten and a sans serif font here. You can, of course, arrange the text again. So if we do more text, but you can also add it to the middle, bottom, or the top of the note as well. There you go. Create links as usual. The size, you have 3 predefined sizes, which is small, medium, and large. So those are predefined, but you can always do this as well. So you can do that. You can scale your notes up, but it's nice to always have this default size to fall back on, because then you know that when you have a bunch of different ones and people make different sizes and shapes, you know that you can always go in, select all of these, and just set the size to the same. So now they're all medium. And you can see how everything snaps together like that. Yeah, color, and then we have tags. You can tag stuff as well. So this is an idea. And the tags will be available next time as well. So you can just click that if you want to add it as an idea. Solved maybe, and that could be green. There we go. So this is an idea that it's solved. All right, so that is sticky notes. And now let's look at my favorite. This is shapes. Shapes, it's fairly simple. It's just a bunch of normal shapes that you would use in charts and especially for flow charts. You can always change the shape like we talked about earlier. Like you can go for a square or a rounded rectangle. This is one of my favorites. So let's have a look at this and start typing something in here. Rounded square. Oh, bye mouse. All right, let's get back to that. This is my rounded square, and that's fine. We still got the same text options like we had earlier, or we have the same attributes that we did for the actual text. So this is quite nice. But one thing I like to do with the shapes is to create flowcharts. Now, if we were to plan out this video in Miro, what I would do, I would look at, so an introduction. And then I would want to have a timeline. So what I would do, if you click these dots, you get an arrow. And when you let go of that arrow, it asks you, do you want to add the same object or do you want to add something new? So I want to add the same object because these are my chapters. So introduction, and then I could go boards, for instance. And you can see how these are now connected. So whenever I move this around, the arrow will stick to it. And an arrow is also an element. So I'm going to go in here and choose a style that fits me better, something like that. So I have my introduction and I have my boards. And I can keep doing this. So for instance, I could do the same item. This is my menu. So I could go in and say menu. Now for each of these sections, first of all, let's move this a bit out of the way so we have room here. Now what I can do is I can go down the way I did with these other arrows as well. And now I don't want the same object because now we're going to work on the sub chapters. So I can either create sticky notes or like circles. I'm just going to add a normal square. And now I can see that it's hard to visualize. If I'm here, it's hard to visualize what's what. So what I'm going to do is to create a bluish background here and maybe make a bold text here. And if you remember earlier, we went in here and we copied the style. And then it's super easy to go in and paste that style for these guys. So that means that you don't have to do this individually one by one. Now you have the same style on the chapter headings. And then for the introduction, I can go in here and say Miro.com. If you hold Alt or Option and move this, you get a duplicate. So if you need a duplicate somehow, if you want to have like the first step on the boards over there, you can do that. Other than that, I just use the arrows and I let go and I do the same object. So Miro.com, maybe on the introduction, we talked about affiliate link. And the next one we talked about was to download the app, maybe pricing as well. So this is like super clean and intuitive way of setting up all the chapters for our video. And you see where this is going, right? So that's like super clean, and I've used this. I'm actually going to show you that now. I've used this extensively in my UX studies. So if I go to my boards and my notes from university, we were a team of 4 students and we broke down individuals chapters. Case studies, interesting. So here we are. We've created a table for case studies. We wanted to categorize like what's the benefits, what's the downsides, what methods do we use, how do we do it, what kind of types do we have. And that's all fine because it's text-based and it's kind of easy to go in and pick out different things. But when we go down here, this is how you would conduct a case study, right? So before you even choose your type, so you need to have all of these sorted out. And then when you go to choose type, you can see this is still part of that timeline that we talked about. Then we go into the different types. And like I can tell you right now, I don't remember all of these, like what they do. So what I did was I created an extra box, like an extra, what is this box? And then when you've chosen your type, you go in here and you choose your case. And then you have to choose between instrumental or intrinsic case. So all my gray ones are like additional information that would help me like with examples, and then everything that goes through the whole timeline. And then in the end, you develop a protocol for the case study. And this is everything that you would include. So this is a beautiful way to break down anything really with nodes. I love nodes. It's great to use in cases like this. So hopefully now already you would see like 2,000 use cases for this. One thing that I will mention with pen, because it's kind of hard to type with this, but if you have a tablet or you use the iPad, you can probably do some nice writing. But one thing I want to do is I want to use the highlighter. And when if you have an assignment text or any text that you're going to break down or analyze, especially when you're a team of more than one, so if you're 2 or more, you can start breaking down assignment text or any text, and you can just start outlining whatever you want to discuss, or if you want to categorize something. So I have my green there, and then I can do yellow. So you can do this to categorize. And what we used to do was that when we broke down a case study on how bees are affecting our environment, and how beekeepers have different issues with their bees, we could go in and then we can continue like analyzing this, and we now have color codes already from our text into our sticky notes. All right, so when you're working with all of these elements everywhere, things tend to clutter around, and things are just everywhere. So you want to clean up, you want to group, maybe you want to space things evenly and all that stuff. So if we grab all of these, and I'm using Shift, by the way, sorry, I should have said that in the intro. If you click here on that selection tool, then your hand can move. With the hand icon, you can move everything, anything, anywhere. When you do click the pen again, or the arrow again, sorry, when you click an item, you select it. So if you try to navigate with the left mouse button, you move it around. But if you click right outside, you can still navigate. And for me, that I used to like misclick all the time. So what I did is I started navigating with the middle mouse button. So with the middle mouse button, even if you're over an item or an element, you can still navigate. And the same for selection. Instead of going click, shift click, you can shift and drag. So if you try to drag a rectangle like this and you don't hold shift, you're just going to navigate, right? You're just going to move because you're outside. So shift and drag to select multiple items. Now you can see here that there's a filter, we've selected 19 items. We haven't just selected the boxes, we've also selected the arrows, and we've selected the highlights. So if we want to filter those, we can start by looking at the shapes. And we're going to look at the alignment now. So I'm going to click here, and we get a bunch of different options. Now, I'm only going to look at the spacing between them, so we're going to distribute them horizontally first. And that failed miserably. That's really failed miserably. All right, so what I normally do if that fails, I try to narrow it down. So let's distribute those. Now these are evenly distributed. And what I do next is that I want to distribute these as well vertically, like this. So we get a nice even spacing here. And then for this one now, I know that I can select it and then hold shift. I have to actually select and drag it a little bit and then hold shift and snap it down. You can see these grid lines snap it into place. And then for these guys as well, well, this one first, maybe we should actually just do this and align them all to the left and then just move them in till it snaps like that. And of course I missed these guys, so I'm just going to place them on top manually again. But now you can see that, oh wow, if he wants to move this piece, now he actually has to move that and then move that if he misses it, like the actual highlight. So he has to like drag select every time, and then maybe he actually grabs the arrow or another box. So there must be a better way, right? And one way you can do a bit of a more organized setup is you can group things. So if I select this highlight and the box, I can group them. I can group them there. So if I just grab anything here now and move it, it's grouped. But what if I want to actually grab the highlight now? I can't. But if you double click, you can access whatever's inside of the group. And you can see this blue box represents the actual group you're in. So these are still grouped. So maybe if you want to group the introduction, you would just go like this and group those. So if you want to move the introduction around now, you can move the whole thing. And again, if I need to access, if I want to move this back into place, I can just double click it and move it back in. And it's still part of the group. Another thing that happens often is that you want to kind of organize things and you want to have stuff look nice. Even though we have groups, you might want to consider something called frames. And a frame is just a part of the whiteboard. Look at it like a basket. So whatever you put into the basket, you can carry around. So if I make a frame now, we're just going to use custom. And I make sure that all these items are inside of my frame. It will move with the frame. So this is outside of the frame, and these are inside of the frame. So if I move the frame, everything here moves with it. If I pull this out of the frame, it stays outside of the frame. If it's inside, it moves with the frame. Other elements as well that you might bump into is when you try to add backgrounds or something similar. So with the shapes, we're going to add a rounded rectangle, and then we're going to drag something like this. Maybe we want to make like a container. And if we give this a color, something like gray, there we go. Now it blocked everything. Well, fortunately, you can just click and go to more and bring it to back. And now maybe you want to grab these two and group them again. So there's tons of ways that you can organize your layout, your canvas, your everything is super flexible. So this is completely up to you. One thing that sometimes happen is that snapping isn't as great anymore. So you might want to go in and snap individual pieces. So you can see that when I move the group around, it was hard for me to snap this back into place. It actually just does not snap. But then I can go in here and I can snap these individually. All right, that's frames. And then for the beauty of Miro as well, like this is a huge one. We're only going to look at a few cases. And since we've kind of already made a flowchart, which is one of my favorites in Miro, we are going to look at a Kanban and a mind map. So let's go up here to templates. There are an insane amount of templates, and you can group them or you can filter them by what kind of a use case you have. So you have meetings and workshops, you have all these different things, brainstorming, research, design. There are tons of these, and you can also search. So we're going to search for a Kanban board. And then we're going to look at this called Kanban framework. And you can also see that there are others here that are based on a Kanban as well. So if you click one, you can do a preview. You can even like zoom in with the scroll wheel and look around. So you can either use a blank template that when it strips out all the examples, and for this one, we're going to use a pre-filled one. Boom, now it dropped the whole thing onto our canvas. And if you're used to working with Kanbans, like something for Trello or other software, you can just move tasks around like this. All right, that was Kanban. Let's look at mind maps like we just talked about. So I'm just going to search for mind map. And I'm not even going to preview that because I know what it looks like. And I'm going to use the template. Here we go. Problem, type something, solution. There we go. And for a mind map as well, if you remember how we worked with the nodes, you would drag out arrows like this. One benefit of this is that you can just type something, and when you hit enter, you're going to get a new line. So you don't have to create all of these manually. But if you want a new one, for example, on this one, click the plus and you create another level of your tree. So that's a really fast and intuitive way of making a mind map. And you can also make a chapter. I've planned complete courses with these. All right, one last thing that we're going to look at is apps. So we have this 3 dots here. You can get extra apps, like additional apps. So you can go to get more apps, and then you can search for app integrations. And in our case, we're just going to look at Unsplash, and I'm sure you're familiar with Unsplash. And I have that installed. It's installed here. If you want it installed, you click on it and you just click install. So what that does is that it allows me to use the Unsplash API to browse for images. So if we need a polar bear, hello, click it, and we just drop it onto the canvas. Now we have a polar bear waving at us. Pretty sweet. All right, I hope that covered like the introduction to Miro. We're gonna look at more Miro content in the future. Make sure you subscribe so you get a notification whenever I upload my next videos. We're gonna look into how I use Miro to break down chapters of books, how you use it for presentations and planning and all that stuff. So I hope to see you back here soon.